Hi, I'm Rod Ford. I'm the online campus pastor here at Hopeful Lutheran Church. Thanks for joining me on this Friday edition of Lunchtime with the Pastors. For this edition, I sat down with my friend Dave Lerseth from Friends of Madagascar Mission. I found David's story about his ministry infectious, and I wanted to learn more. I hope that you'll enjoy the conversation, and I hope you'll post your comments below.
I'm Dave Lerseth. I'm an ordained clergy, and when I retired, I was working at the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America as the director for global mission support. In other words, raising between $7 and $8 million a year for missionaries and for global projects. So when it came to time of quote unquote retiring, I thought, not for me. So I went home and told my wife I was going to have a refirement party because we had a retirement party. And so people came to the party because they wondered what a retirement party was. And I announced that I am now starting a new career based upon all that I've learned in my time of serving as a parish pastor in South Dakota, working for, and also in Illinois, and twice in South Dakota, once in Illinois, serving as assistant to a bishop in Iowa under the American Lutheran Church, and then working in the national church. So I have a lot of experience in ministry, but in many different fields. And so I've just had an exciting time organizing FOM from the ground up. And this year in 2021, we just hit a milestone of support that just amazes me and the board and everybody regarding with FOM. But that's who I am. I'm married. I have 3 grown daughters and families, and they all live within 20 minutes of us here in Victoria, Minnesota, on the southwest side of Minneapolis.
Oh, you're very lucky to have your family living so close. That's great.
Yeah, it's a real treasure.
I don't know if you're aware, but I was first sort of introduced to Madagascar and your mission through Eric Svensson from ILT. And he just mentioned it to me kind of in a side conversation. And I didn't really know much about Madagascar as a country or you or your organization. And Eric spoke very highly of it. And I started kind of poking around in the background. And so I was excited to meet you as well at the LCMC conference in Columbus. It was serendipitous.
Yeah, thank you.
So how did you get connected to Madagascar? Why is Madagascar so in your heart?
Well, that's a good question, because I was working in raising funds for 60 different mission sites when I worked with ELCA Global Mission. Madagascar is chosen by me because when I was a young kid in the church in which I grew up, we had a children's mission organization, and we studied the 7 mission areas or fields, as they called them in that day. And Madagascar was one of them. In fact, was one of the big ones of that. And we had missionaries that came and stayed at our home when they were home on called furlough at that time. And they told me stories about Madagascar. They told me about the little children, and they showed me pictures. So it shows to me that teaching our children about mission or any kind of thing about the church's work, starting with the young children, is so very important. And so as I went through life and as a pastor, and then when I went to the national office, I always kept an eye on what was going on in Madagascar. And so it became, as people in Madagascar ask me that question all the time, why Madagascar for you? And I tell them the story that God planted the seed when I was a young boy, and through my whole ministry, it grew and grew. And when I went to work in the national church, it kept growing. And then at the point of retirement, it was ripe to pick. And I then chose to start in Madagascar because of what Madagascar is to me.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that story. I've heard a rumor, and I spread this around a lot, and I don't know if it's true. Is it true that there are like 3 million Lutherans in Madagascar?
Yeah, over 3 million. I think probably close to 4 million. I always joke with them because I think they keep the number down because they have to pay so much per baptized member to be a part of the Lutheran World Federation. And so I think they're closer to 4 million people. Yeah, it's a large church, and it's a fast growing church. And we like to be a part of that fast growth through the programs that we support there in Madagascar.
That's great. So FOM, F-O-M-M, is Friends of Madagascar Mission. Tell me about what FOM does.
Well, I was standing at one of those booths where I met you in Ohio, Rod, and a lady came up and said, "So what are you doing in Madagascar?" And I casually said nothing. And she said, "So why are you here?" And I said, "Well, let me explain. We do not run any programs. We don't send anybody over there to run anything. The Malagasy Lutheran Church has plenty of workers. They just don't have the resources, and they need the prayer support. So what we do is we work with them in defining projects. We started off in 2010 identifying 3 projects, and now we're at 8, I should say programs. We use the term program. We have 8 programs, and then we have numerous projects, and a project is a one-time kind of event, and a program is an ongoing program. So we support what they need. And let me just say that in Madagascar, the Malagasy Lutheran Church, their primary goal is evangelism. Everything focuses on evangelism. And they do not have the problem of choosing between evangelism of sharing the gospel by word and sacrament and social justice. To them, it's one of the same action, whether it be, it's like, to me, we talk about the word of God and the sacraments in the Lutheran Church about being co-equal in terms of their effectiveness of bringing the gospel to people. For them, proclaiming the word and doing the social justice are the same. It's a part of one action, and it's the love of God that we are sharing. And so we do humanitarian projects, food, water, medicine, although we're not a medical sending, because there's an organization called Global Health Ministry that does most of that, and we don't get involved. But food, in a sense, is medical because it helps provide food for the body. But we support evangelists that go out into the villages and share the word of God. We support a prison ministry. There are 83 prisons in Madagascar, and the French system is the basis in Madagascar because it was a French colony until 1950 for about 75 years. And the French system is you're guilty until you prove yourself to be innocent. So if you get arrested, you're thrown in jail. And it is one of the most corrupt prison systems in the world, according to Amnesty International. And we're working in the prisons, meaning that they come out of a congregation in the city where the prison is, and they train workers. They call them shepherds, and they go into the prison and they do the ministry. And I've been in many of the prisons that we are in Madagascar. Currently, we're at 17 out of the 83, and our goal is to reach more and more every year. And so they go in and they do a ministry of word and sacrament. They teach confirmation. They do baptisms. They pass out food. They pass out medical supplies, clothing. And then when they leave prison, if they're fortunate enough to get out, they help give them monies to go back home. It's an incredible program. And then we have programs of drip irrigation. We have programs of feeding people who need food. And we're now working on a huge project of drilling wells in the arid southwest of Madagascar, one of the most arid regions in the world, that if there's going to be a drought anywhere in the world, it's going to be in that southwest Madagascar. And they've had 4 years without rain, but thanks be to God, I've been getting pictures all this week because they've been inundated with rain. And it's interesting because I look on the radar screen to see if it's raining in the areas where we work. And I one time emailed the president of one of the synods and said, "I see it's raining in Petroka today." And he was not there. He was up in the capital city of Antananarivo. He said to me, wrote back, "How do you know?" And I said, "I looked at the radar." And I said, "Call your wife and ask her." So he did. And then he called me back and said, "Hey, it is raining. I can't believe it that you knew that." And my wife said, "How did that Pastor Lerseth in America know it was raining in Petroka?" So anyway, we're in to do the programs that the Malagasy Lutheran Church needs support for. And the average income is $300 a year. Now just think about that. Even if they give generously to the church, it's not a lot of money. So what we do is really provide the resources to help these people who are so on fire with the gospel to do what they do best, and that is to share the gospel in word and in justice.
That's great. I think I know the story of your cross there. because I got one of your crosses when we were at the conference, and I wear
Yeah.
mine on Sundays when I'm in serving in my church. And so that cross was made by one of the prisoners, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The government is just so inept. They don't provide anything. They don't hardly provide enough food for the people to eat in the prisons. And prisons that one prison that I go to when I'm there, and I preached at the worship services there, is built for 150, and there are almost 1,000 people in that prison. And they lay at night like cordwood in a room, and every hour the guard comes in and blows a whistle, and they can then turn over. And I've got a video from Amnesty International that shows that. It's just cruelty, and just so sad to see how people are treated. But we said, ask the government if we can start a vocational program. And they did, and they said, sure. So now they're making wood products. They make some metal projects. Women do some weaving of baskets. And so we're planning on extending that, and hopefully eventually want to put it into an international trade kind of thing where we can send them to various countries and they can be sold on the market. But we have to build up the quality of what we send in order to become marketable in that way, in that kind of global way. But we're trying to create a stream of revenue so that they can become proud of being more self-supporting, that it's not only us who are raising the money. We're willing to do that, but we think that it's our job also to help them to understand stewardship. And part of that stewardship is learning how to raise the money to support their projects, as it is in any congregation.
David, what are the biggest needs in Madagascar right now?
Well, prayer. We're in the process right now. I had a meeting this morning online with creating a program for the Lenten season that congregations can use. And the top priority of that is to get people to pray for the ministry and the needs of the people in Madagascar. Secondly, obviously, it is funding projects and programs. I worked in the national office, and the average cost of sending a missionary family when I was there was $100,000. And I'm sure it's gone up now. And the reason for that is salary, insurance, pension, training of putting kids in international schools, all sending them back and forth between the United States and their point of service. We can place an evangelist in a village in Madagascar for $600 a year. And they're doing the same thing, but we don't have to bring them back home. We don't have to teach them the language. We don't have to teach them the culture. So they're there for the rest of their life, and they're living and happy to live with an income that's double the national average of $600. And then we also ask supporters of the evangelists to provide $100 for what we call continuing education. We're planning one now. I usually am there when they have those events, but because of COVID, we're not able to travel. So we plan that, and we bring everybody together for a big meeting of celebration and learning. And then we now started a year ago what we call a health program insurance. Now, when I presented this to our board, they laughed because I was asking them for $100 a year, and they said, $100 a year, what is that? Well, in America, $100 doesn't go far. But there, you break your leg, it's probably $5. To be hospitalized, we just had a person who needed surgery because of a real deathly problem. And I felt touched because my father died of prostate cancer. And this guy was diagnosed with prostate cancer and had to have the surgery. And we provide $100. And the cost of him to go to the hospital and the cost of surgery was $160. So I turned to my wife and I said, can we send $60 more? And she said, why not 100? So we sent $100 more. So, and we saved his life by the surgery that he had. And so you see the costs are very small. So we now provide a insurance. So basically it's $800, though we don't demand that anybody pay the extra $200, but most of them do pay that because it's not that much more for Americans' wallet books to pay $800 rather than just $600.
Right. Wow.
So that's a great need in terms of the prayer and then the program support. Uh, any amount of money people can give. We have a policy that I started when I organized this organization from my experience working in the national office. 100% of what a donor gives goes to the program. We don't take anything out, not 1 cent for administrative costs. I have never received a dime of salary. I've never received a dime of reimbursement for my costs when I go someplace. When I was out in Ohio, I paid for my motel, I paid for my registration, I paid for my food, my travel. And I do that because to me, that's my gift for God blessing me with an income in my retirement and my wife. And we're able to do that. Now, we've just organized, I've been doing this as a Lone Ranger, the only dog in the pony show, as my board says, for 10 years. And now we have created a staff. But the requirement to be on the staff for us is that you work with your skills and abilities and you don't get any remuneration, nothing. So guess what? We have a grant writer and a researcher who lives in Australia. And I meet with him every week to talk about plans and things that to do. We have a media consultant who now is whom you mentioned about, Pastor Eric Swenson. And Eric lives right now between New York and Nairobi, Kenya, and will be in Ghana where his wife is from, and they're building a home there. And so Eric is our media consultant director, and he's doing an incredibly great job of getting the word out through the media. And we just acquired the services of a development director, a retired LCMC pastor, and I meet with him almost every day. And so we're just so blessed with having people come and working with us in that way. So we have this uniqueness of giving 100% of what we receive from the donor, and a lot of people really like that. They see. So I have one donor that's been a generous donor, and he wrote me and he said, you're on the top of our list because you don't take anything out. And it's a lot of the organizations that we support. And I understand if you have to pay people to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, and people have to make a living, but we're trying to design a unique organization and a nonprofit, because I see a lot of them that, we're in Columbus where we were at that convention, and half of their money goes towards their budget because they have staffs and expenses. So I'm not condemning them. I'm just saying we have a very unique way in which we operate, and I think donors really appreciate it. So that's a long answer to your question.
I think that's great. It is a fascinating model, and I do appreciate it, and the hard work that all of your team does now.
Yeah.
So your passion for Madagascar is infectious, Dave. I have to tell you, I get more and more interested in Madagascar every time I talk to you or Eric. And so my last question for you this afternoon is, how can I and my church and other individuals get involved if we want to?
Well, number one, as I say, we covet your prayers. In your private prayer and the prayers of your congregation, to remember Madagascar. It has a long, long tradition of Lutheranism. The Scandinavian Norwegian missionaries went there in 1866. The first American missionaries went there in 1888. And since that time, we've kept pouring missionaries in when missionary was the way in which we did things. But we now moved into independent churches. And Madagascar was the first mission field to become an organized church with only people's, their own pastors, their own leadership, and their own way. And so you can become involved in the prayer. Support financially is a second kind of way. And individuals, we have lots of individuals who donate, and then congregations such as yours has done. We appreciate that so much. And you can identify individual projects. If a congregation wants something that you want to, so to speak, quote, own, you can do that. We just finished a project of raising funds for rebuilding a Bible school called the Manashua Bible School, an old Bible school in Madagascar from way back in the history of the church. But their buildings were just in terrible. I visited there in fall of October of 2019, and I saw the buildings, and it was only 113 degrees to the day I was there. but they're not asking for air conditioning. They just want to have a decent, building in which their students can live and in which they can go to school. So what I'm trying to say there is that we have some churches and some families who have given large gifts for that, and we will name a building for them. There will be a plaque put there that says, so-and-so Lutheran Church provided the funding for this building. So we're willing to do those kinds of things. Even buildings like that, I've said to congregations, if you want to go over there and help build the building, you're welcome to do so. It might be a little bit difficult because you live like you're camping without a lot of camping conveniences, but we simply open the door and say, FOM is a very donor-friendly organization, and what the donor says is the way it goes. We recognize and respect every request that donors make of us, congregations or individuals, and I think people appreciate that, and we appreciate it as well. But we're here to serve God and the church and the mission of the church, and we go out and speak, and I have a speaking with a Rotary Club next week. I'm going out to North Dakota to preach in a couple of weeks, and I'm going down to Iowa in the next few weeks. So we're just engaged in trying to tell the story. I love to tell the story. And thanks for your compliment about that. People have accused me of being infectious about the story of Madagascar because I can't stop talking about it.
Well, it's infectious in a good way. I assure you, it is great. I really appreciate your sharing this time with us today, Dave. And I appreciate your passion for Madagascar. I hope it's infectious to others as well. We're looking forward to an ongoing partnership with you. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's certainly implanted in my heart. And just so much appreciate you and your work.
Yeah, well, you just let us know what we can do for you, and we will do it.
That sounds great. We will.
God bless, and thanks for the time, and God bless your congregation.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to talk to you today.